Hey, I want to welcome you to Stretch. It's good to see you today. I'm Phil.
I'm Phil.
Awesome. And we're just really excited to be here today. Always trying to have a conversation about how do Christians and culture work together? How do we as Christians become relevant to a culture, but at the same time stay true to our faith? And so I was thinking this week, me. My kids are in their school musical this week. It's a big production. Bragging on my kids, letting you know.
Did you want to plug it?
One is the star. The other one is like fourth, fifth billing, so they're doing good. It's the Newsies at Rocky Hill High School. It'll be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, February something, something, something. I don't remember the dates, 8th, 9th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere in that. The second full weekend of February. Whatever. I'm not the publicist, but the church is going to be going on Sunday. We'd love for you to come. But it got me thinking. My kids are in this play. We enjoy this play. It's a Disney play, and so it's good, wholesome stuff. And we think sometimes, like I've done like church plays in churches when I was a kid and other stuff, and it always seems like there's people that are like, well, there's real musicals or real art, and then there's like Christian stuff. You know what I'm saying? Even like in the music world or the movie world or the art world, there's this disconnect. And so I thought, we should talk about Christians and their relationship with art. So our Facebook question, and we're going to plop that up for you, and you can jump over to Facebook, or when you get to the end of this, go back to Facebook and watch it and find it. Our Facebook question is basically about the GOAT. Who is the greatest Christian artist of any genre of all time? Christian artist. We're trying to see how we get there. So you can think about that. Phil's going to think about that.
Christian artist.
Now, if you try to cheat and Google it and you type in Christian artist, it's probably just going to give you musicians, like current musicians. And so it's not going to give you Michelangelo, all right? But I mean, I put him up there, not the Ninja Turtle.
I was just gonna, say the orange.
But
the orange one?
Yes,
the orange Ninja Turtle.
That's the quality information you get here. For those of you that don't know, Michelangelo, what's his nickname? What's his job? What does he do for the team?
I don't know. He's the comedian.
He's the comedian. All right,
he's the funny one.
So Phil, when you think about Christian art, I think about back in the day. Back in my day, in medieval times, all art was commissioned by the church, was done for religious purposes. I mean, the biggest, the greatest things, not just art, architecture, poetry, theater, drama, concertos. You think of things like Handel's Messiah and stuff like that. These huge productions, everything was commissioned by the church, was kind of run through the church, was done with a Christian theme. And today, sometimes when we put the word Christian in front of art, a lot of people think, well, that just means we're lowering our standards. So what are your thoughts maybe about your understanding of who's the greatest out there, or maybe your thoughts about the state of Christian art today?
Well, I think you would generally think that there's a lot of artists out there in history that would have identified as Christian or Roman Catholic now.
Right.
I want to say I need a history fact check, but I want to say Picasso identified as a Christian.
Right. Yeah.
So there's definitely out there. I think it's just Christian artist means something just totally different than history. I think you alluded to that. This is definitely a sphere, and I've studied this a little bit in college, and this is a sphere that has really radically changed, I want to say, pretty recent in history. This is a field, the arts, that's been absolutely dominated by the church. And you said everything was really run through the church.
Right.
Back in the day, the Roman times, into that Middle Ages. So, I mean, when you think of, like, the greatest Christian artists, that means something totally different than what, right. If you're thinking in a historical context versus today you might say, like, oh, Chris Tomlin is the greatest just because he has the number one hits, or Lauren Daigle, these popular music people.
Right.
that might actually appear on the Billboard 100 for Christian music. They might even break into the actual 100.
Yeah.
So for me, artists personally, I don't know. I would say Picasso because I think he identified as a Christian. And obviously it's Picasso, so
Right.
I think he's the GOAT.
We're going to have to argue about that. I think Michelangelo's way better than Picasso. Never laid on his back for like a million years painting the top of the building that God himself said, that is the exact picture of me. So,
and I also might get those two confused. Picasso's
the one that has the faces that look like that. That's Picasso. But yes, it's a great argument. It's I mean, when you do art, we do art just for the purpose of art, right? Not for making money. No, I mean, part of making art is you're building stuff to meet your clientele. And back in the day, the church was the place where the money was. I mean, the church and the state were so close together, and the church would pay top dollar for art, and so artists really wanted to produce things that were going to be able to be something the church would embrace and love. I mean, I've been to France and taken the tour of those cathedrals in France. It broke my heart when Notre Dame was burning on fire, because it's such a beautiful place. The architecture. I mean, we don't build stuff like that anymore. No. I mean, last time I saw a church being built, we had to debate whether it was a movie theater or an office complex.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these cathedrals and you look at these, like the Sistine Chapel ceiling. I mean, like, that doesn't exist today. Christian artists mean something different today than what it did back then, because the church, I mean, it was just so much bigger. To be a Christian artist. I mean, you had monks, divisions of monks, full-time job, day and night, painting and translating like records and scripture. And I mean, like, it was just something that was completely dominated by the church.
Yeah.
And I mean,
in all sorts of ways. I mean, my kids are in choir and musicals and stuff. I know you were big into the music, high school music and stuff like that. And we live in a place where religion is very frowned upon in the public schools. We're really, up in the Northeast, that separation of church and state thing is a huge deal. And so there's so very few places. But when you go to a concert, there's always some sort of song about Jesus or something. Often it's in Latin, but that's a result of the fact that most classical and quality music, chamber music and things like that, for centuries and centuries came out of the Christian background, Christian heritage.
Yeah, and I think the progressive culture, especially of the Northeast, you really are hard-pressed to avoid that, because you're avoiding centuries and centuries of history.
Yep.
And it's just something, like, I feel, especially as an art teacher, a music teacher in public school today, like, you really have to go out of your way, especially in music, to avoid Christian songs, like Handel's Messiah. And you think of all these artists like Beethoven, who might have identified as Christian. Right.
So these guys coming out of this background. And now let's step it up a level. Our producer back there, John Harris, he's from Memphis. How do you say not? Jackson. He's a car ride away from Memphis. All right, I guess Memphis is where the snooty people go, but Memphis is kind of where that blues and that jazz scene began rising up in America, and that was a direct relationship to people coming out of a Southern gospel, that gospel background, down south gospel background, and bringing their music into kind of a contemporary, cultural sense. And so most of those artists, you go back and find those original blues artists and even those original rock and roll artists, Elvis Presley and guys like that, and they're going to have a gospel album. They're going to have, their albums are going to have, Elvis, you can find him singing Amazing Grace and other things like that. And there was this huge influence in that early development of that, of even rock and roll, connected to that gospel music thing. And so how do you think that plays into when we think about music today?
Well, like I just said, your culture today is just trying to avoid it. Nothing Jesus, nothing edgy, nothing, too crazy. Um, it was just it's a different time.
Yeah.
It was just a different time, and it's hard to explain. But I feel like in America, that post World War II era is where things really, that separation of, you just church is what you did.
Right. You
were a Christian, even if you weren't a real Christian or a practicing Christian. You still went to church, and you sat in church for 2 hours on Sunday. It was just different, and I think that. Those guys, Elvis and that historical upbringing of the South,
Aretha Franklin, and those ladies, even the groups coming out of Motown, that so many of them had their roots in a church somewhere, which is where they first picked up the guitar or first sang a song. And
you could even come up to Kanye West today, and obviously his early music way different, but he was raised around the church, and now you can see that he's kind of returned to what his grandmother or someone raised him on, and so
so and so I guess when I look historically, I see that so much of our influence in the arts, and not just music arts, but that's I think what we see the most, but so much of our influence in the arts comes out of a Christian worldview, and it was the quality work of Christian writers and singers and playwrights and poets, and now, like I said, now when you put the word Christian in front of something artistic, people immediately think it means you're downgrading the quality of what's going on. Right. You're making it less of what's happening, and so let's come up kind of our Facebook question. Let's look at it from a modern perspective. If you were to look at something modern today, how would you rank some of our Christian performers or Christian things going on today?
Well, it's just something that kind of annoys me, to be honest. It's like that Christian label, Christian music, Christian movies, Christian this, and it's really just kind of this. To me, it's this laziness of Christian church drawing back, trying to separate themselves from modern day culture rather than engaging in it. Like we've alluded to, the church has always permeated culture, but now it's like the church is trying to draw back. And I think that what you said about like there's a step down when you think of Christian music, Christian movies, it's frustrating because I think it exists.
Yeah.
I think it's getting better.
Right.
Higher budget movies, more higher budget recording studios. I think it's getting better, but there was just a time where it was just bad.
Yeah. And for that we don't downgrade those groups that are doing that. It's kind of like our podcast. I mean, we've done. This is like number 11 or 12, and so we haven't done that many. But if you go back and watch episode 1, which we were completely illegible, you could not hear anything we were saying because our microphone was not set properly. So everything was this quiet. And it was awful, and we have since added productions. We've added new overlays. We've added extra things that are happening. We've been able to access the web, on this podcast so you can see stuff. We've grown and we've matured. And the only way you can get to quality is if you pay the price by slugging through all the stuff at the beginning. And so I applaud, you think back to those early like Christian movies. I mean, people think back to Fireproof or something. That was a real early one. I'm old enough. I remember there was a Christian movie called Extreme Days. All right. You probably don't remember. Kim's back in the back. She's cringing because she knows I'm going to sing the theme song by Toby Mac. It was like, we're living in extreme days.
I'm cringing at this because I knew you were going to sing it.
Yes. And it was kind of like an exports, but it was like, hey, we're exporting, and one kid's like, yeah, but I'm having a hard time, Jesus, and then and you kind of knew what was going to happen, and there was a lot of really good filming, like the cinematography, because they were filming people snowboarding and doing cool stuff, but at the same time the story was a little cheesy sort of thing, and then you get Fireproof and big stories in Fireproof come out when hey, well Kirk Cameron is playing a married person and he's got to kiss this woman, but it's not his wife. And we have Christian controversy because we're like, we're like, well, is that unethical for Kirk Cameron, the actor, to kiss the actress
Yeah.
in the movie? And we get weird stuff like that, and people look at us and say, "You Christians, stop making movies."
Yeah.
But and we're like, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to push through.
Yeah. There's got to be Christian actors in the sphere of acting and actresses. And, it's just that, I think it's that hyper morality is what I kind of want to get at. Is like, it's that you're overreacting to the guy doing his job.
Right.
I think it's okay if he kisses this woman because he doesn't love her and he's faithful to his wife.
Right.
It's okay, he's doing his job. And I just think that early in the 80s, the 90s, maybe a little bit of the 70s, there was just that hyper morality, like, Christian, we need to be segregated.
Right.
And we're not, we're not a Christian actor. I'm a Christian actor with a Christian producing company, a Christian filming company.
It was a badge of honor almost.
Yeah.
Hey, we're intentionally bad so people know we're
Yeah.
Christian. The Davy and Goliath episodes. I was never allowed to watch TVs on Sundays except before church on Sundays. They would always show Davy and Goliath and Superbook. And you're probably too young to know Superbook and stuff. But they were Christian cartoons that were production-wise so bad. But when you were a kid and you didn't have the internet or anything, it was the only thing you could get. And so when you had to get your kid crack, you had to get some cartoons. You did Superbook, whether you liked it or not, and those people paid the price. They forged through where their budgets were minuscule compared to main productions. What they could do, and you think about the next generation, like the VeggieTales things, and when VeggieTales first started coming out.
Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah, and they really were, when they began, on the cutting edge of some of the CGI stuff, and their stuff looked comparable to what could be done out there. But then as the industry began becoming so mechanized and so expensive to produce stuff, you could quickly see how they were lagging behind in what they were capable of doing, as opposed to what Pixar's throwing out there, and then what these other animation studios were throwing out there on a weekly basis on TV, and then VeggieTales all of a sudden starts becoming a whole different animal, trying to keep up with that stuff. As Christians, can we continue to maintain that pace?
Yeah, you just need people that are willing to drop them cash and make the quality.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing here at Stretch, is we're trying to constantly get better.
And dropping the cash.
dropping the cash. Just trying to get better, produce a better quality, a better video picture so you can see us.
That's right. And yeah, we were debating, like, can we afford to buy one more tripod? That's the big, deep drop in cash we're looking at.
But in order to be better, we might have to do that.
Yeah.
It's this sacrifice. It's like we don't have to be intentionally bad.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree. Yeah. So I love that. So we've got, and I know our producer up there, we're throwing stuff. He said, always warn me when I'm going to do stuff. I want to read a Bible verse for you. We got our verse of the day going up there. I run my Bible verse off of my phone, and of course now that I'm pulling it up, it is jumped off the verse that we were on. Read. Here we go. So our Bible verse of the day was out of Exodus chapter 35. And these passages in Exodus where the Israelites have escaped Egypt, God has given them some very specific things to do. And in Exodus 35:30 it says, Moses then said to the Israelites, look, the Lord has appointed by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, in the tribe of Judah. And he has filled him with God's Spirit, with wisdom, understanding, and ability in every kind of craft, to design artistic works in gold, silver, and bronze, to cut gemstones for mounting, and to carve wood for work in every kind of artistic craft. He has also given both him and Oliab, the son of Ashamach, of the tribe of Dan, the ability to teach others. He has filled them with skill to do all the work of a gem cutter, a designer, an embroiderer in blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen, and a weaver. They can do every kind of craft and design artistic designs. Now, they specifically were being commissioned to build the first tabernacle, the one in the wilderness that was tents and you had to set it up and take it down. But you look at that passage, and how do you think God, who's given instructions to Moses, how do you think God looked at the idea of us as believers being being involved in the craft, the art of our faith.
Well, I think you see it in creation back in the Genesis story of God is the ultimate artist and he's always creating. So we're his creation. So we reflect him and we have a creativity and we're always creating. And you see in the story that God has gifted these guys to do things of beautiful works. And I like how embroiderer, I want to say bedazzler. That's how I want to translate that. And I think that God is we're reflecting the image of God, and God is creative. So we obviously are receiving His gifts, and we are natural creators as well.
Yeah, I think that's part of the, it says we bear the image of God, and God is creator. I think that's one of the things He's designed us to be. And so to be creative is not a negative thing for Christians, and I think Christians should pursue creative arts, creativity to their best. We want to be the best of the best when it comes to the creative world out there, because we do have something to offer. We're not just creating for ourselves; we're creating for the divine, and there is a value behind that. There is a value to that, and so I think one of the pictures that our producer has back there is of just a bunch of different Christian artists. When you think about Christian artists, Christian musicians today, who are some of those that you're like, man, that person I think is exemplifying the best? They are giving their all to God in a unique and a quality sort of way.
Well, I can't say that I specifically know any Christian painters.
Right. Well, I'm mainly musicians right now.
I was just going to say, musicians seems to be top dog right now. I think personally for me, if you're looking at who's, doing their all for God and, doing a good job of it, I really look to the way that Christian rap has changed, to be perfectly honest. I think that has come so far, and I think of, pioneers like Lecrae, who, if you know a Christian rapper, that's probably the one you know.
Whoa, I know DC Talk. Whammo, way back in the Spit and Shine days when you just were like, those were my Christian rappers.
But I think you think of Lecrae, and I think he was doing it well, so much so that he's winning Grammys. He's on the stage with the big boys.
Yeah.
He's on the same stage with, a Drake, a Kanye West, and there's Lecrae.
Yeah.
Whoa, he's a Christian.
Yeah.
So when I think of, like a giant today, I think of Lecrae off the top of my head. I don't know. Did you have somebody else?
Yeah, no, I think Lecrae is a good guy to think about in that same rap scene. I think sometimes if you go read some of the history of even a guy like Chance the Rapper, there's a lot of stuff that he does is wrestling with faith. And so I know in some places you hear that he is a full-on believer out there preaching. In other places, that he's wrestling with that. But to see that, I know his lyrics have a lot of language stuff, but it also has a lot of stuff where he's searching. And so it's interesting to see that. For me, one of the guys that's in the Christian, like coming out of the Christian realm, like Lecrae came actually out of the secular rap scene and then kind of came to faith later and then kind of moved over. And so that helped him with those connections because he already knew people across the genre. But a guy that actually Kim grew up with was a guy named Bart Miller, who is the lead singer of Mercy Me. Mm-hmm. And I think if you haven't watched the movie, I Can Only Imagine, that was kind of about his life, that was actually a big production movie. That was a Hollywood produced movie that had a real budget, had Hollywood stars that you would recognize and notice, but it was about him writing that song I Can Only Imagine. And what was powerful about that song is it actually hit like number one in the secular charts. I mean, it blew the top off of everything, and it was his first wide produced album that he was sending out there. But what I think made that song so impactful is a lot of Jesus songs are like Sunday school songs, Jesus loves me, this I know sort of stuff, and they're going to make it big in the Christian circles, but it's not going to make it big out there in the world. But his song was really talking about the combination of pain and hurt with the combination of healing and redemption, and in a world that's hurt, the one thing I think they love to hear is somebody saying, how can I I manage that hurt? How can I have that hurt forgiven and fixed? And that song, I Can Only Imagine, I think broke a lot of those barriers, and we saw a lot of that. A lot of that stretch we're talking about. I think that song is a really good example of that stretch where he had his strong faith belief in it, but it was something that was impactful to the people because it was from his heart, something real about the experience of losing his dad, a dad that had abused him when he was younger, a dad that later in life came back to apologize. I mean, people just resonated with that, and I thought that was a real moment in Christian secular history that came together.
Yeah, I mean, so many people can relate to that, and you said that, and that's the thing is, like, I think in the sphere of arts and, Christians engaging culture, I feel like sometimes culture says, hey, I can't relate to you. You're one of those Sunday school people, you're one of those Bible thumpers, and, I think that it's changed in today's society where Christians are going, hey man, let me just, relate to you first, and then we'll get to the greater good and the greater purpose of why I do things second.
Yeah.
But, relating to people, I think, is where Christian arts is kind of moving towards, especially music. Music's, like I said, when I keep thinking of, like, Christian artists, I keep thinking of musicians, and
right.
You think of people that are relating to culture and relevant issues like the father issues.
Yeah.
That movie is a prime example of, and the song, of just something that people can relate to, wrestling with tough questions, and, just a real world experience.
Yeah, so it's just real interesting to see how those things kind of play out together. When I think about, so in that line of who do I think is the greatest, one of my top Christian artists that I go back to is I love a guy named Toby Mac. Now, Toby Mac was the lead singer of DC Talk, but what I love about him was if you go back and look at what he's done, he got Christian success in DC Talk, and they had some secular success with that as well. I mean, I remember when we were in college, this is going to date me, but way back in the 90s, they were on the Arsenio Hall show, like they were the guest musicians on the Arsenio Hall show, and you see those, the band comes on Saturday Night Live or something like that, and they get their one song they play at the end of the show. Well, Arsenio Hall had them do songs between every single break, had them do a full song for the entire audience, and did a sit-down interview on the couch with them. And for those of you that are too young, I mean, Arsenio Hall show was the cool show. I mean, it might have been what elected Bill Clinton to presidency, because that was where Bill Clinton played his saxophone on the Arsenio Hall show. And I mean, that's how influential that show was. And to see these Christian people that I loved and I knew, but you look at Toby Mac, and his message is always so clear, and now he's doing solo stuff. But what I think puts him above for me is look now at his production studio. I think, as much as he loves putting out music and things, and we're praying for him, he lost his son recently, but he has this passion to having new music discovered. Mm-hmm. And if you want to hear like real, fresh, raw Christian music, don't go listen to those mainstream guys. Go find those guys like Toby Mac that have their own production companies, and find the new artists that they're discovering, and you're going to find some really cool stuff out there. I mean, I think your wife is one of those that likes to find the obscure artist, right?
I mean, and there's apps like Spotify that do a good job of that, but it's those pioneers like Toby Mac that went through the bad, where like Christian's music and that bad phase of like.
And there's some bad DC talk, okay? Yeah. We laugh about it now,
but and then now he's put in the work. And now he's kind of made it a little bit, and he's got some capital behind him, and now he can give back to the next generation. And that's the cool part, because now you're just seeing the raw young folk who are, the millennials who are coming up, who are my age, and they're just bringing a whole new perspective to what it means to be a Christian artist nowadays.
All right.
But Toby Mac had to do it first.
He did. Now, I'm going to throw down one more guy. Do you have another person you want to throw down? We got like 1 minute or so left. We're going to get there. But I'm going to throw out my dark horse favorite. My wife is once again moaning in the back. But if you got one first, you can throw.
I got to think real quick.
All right. So
Let's.
So if you want to find what I consider to be one of the quality Christian people out there, it's a guy named Steve Taylor. All right, and Steve Taylor was kind of a niche sort of thing. The first album I ever had from him was On the Fritz. He has done some new things, but he's like a Christian satirist in his music. And so back in the 80s and the 90s, there were a lot of Christian fundamentalists that were like, this guy. He wrote a song called "Jesus is for Losers." He's like, this guy wrote a song called "Jesus is not for losers, they're for winners." But the point is that Jesus is for the broken, the hurt, the people that can't save themselves. We're losers. And so, being a satirist, people didn't understand him, but he was brilliant in what he was saying, and he since has gone on. Like, he was the main producer of the Newsboys when the Newsboys came over. When you think about some of the most iconic Newsboys songs when they first came over, they were probably written by Steve Taylor, because when he kind of got jaded by everybody hitting him for his satire, he started writing for other people and producing, and then he does movies now. He's a movie producer and is really pushing that. And so I love watching his stuff. I love listening to his music. He did a new album not too long ago. He did an album with the band he called Chagall Guevara. Just a lot of weird things going on, but he's my dark horse. If you want to find something funky from the 80s, really more of an indie sort of tune, he would be a good guy to check out.
I didn't know half the things you just,
awesome.
you just said.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, no, my dark horse, I'm gonna be edgy. And I'm going to say Kanye West.
Nice.
Because if you listen to the last album, I loved it.
It was great. Yes, it was.
I loved it. And I know there's so many preachers out there on YouTube that hate it. I loved it. So I'll say Kanye West.
Awesome. Well, I just want to encourage you to, if you like the content you see here, I want to encourage you to click the subscribe button down below. Hit the bell and make sure you click the all notification that goes along with that bell so that you'll be updated and informed anytime one of these things are coming up. If you didn't like what we were talking about, post a nasty comment below, because we really want to be set straight.
We have to read it.
Yeah, so we want you to share that with us, and that's actually a YouTube trick. YouTube gives you points when people comment, so if you tell people to post nasty stuff, then YouTube's like, people are commenting, so
we'll respond too.
so we'll talk back to you. But share with us in the comments below or on Facebook who are your GOATs, greatest of all time Christian artists, musicians, singers, actors, whoever, and let us know those sort of things. And we look forward to seeing you again next week on Stretch. So for me, Phil.
And for me, Phil.
We'll see you again next week. All right, God bless you.